Amidst the absolute chaos that has continued to ensue in the state of Minnesota, on Saturday morning, a man by the name of Alex Preddy was shot and killed in an altercation with federal ICE agents. And both sides of the aisle are presenting information about this incident in a very misleading manner that I believe is only going to lead to more violence and civil unrest. So I brought on my buddy Kai Schwemmer to give his take on it, and curious to hear your guys' thoughts. We just filmed the episode and I forgot to do an intro, so here you go. But my name is Jackson Wayne Paul, and welcome to Latter-day Saints.
What power shall stay the heavens from pouring down knowledge from heaven upon the heads of the Latter-day Saints?
All right, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to get right into it, but not before we introduce I would say the first regular on the show besides Brandon or my brother Hayden, and that is Kai Schwemmer.
Hey, thank you for having me. Glad to be back. Sorry that I'm wearing a Minecraft sweater. I know it's maybe not perfect for the situation we're discussing, which of course is very serious, but thank you nonetheless for having me here.
Don't need to apologize.
Exactly. Usually Kai, I tell him like, wear whatever. He's like, what should I wear? And then I feel like today I should have given further instruction, but hey, no knock on Minecraft, but gosh dang it. So if you're not tracking on the situation, I'd be surprised, but essentially what happened was over the weekend on Saturday, there was an ICE operation that was being conducted to allegedly, and I say allegedly because I've tried to look into the exact specifics of the individual in which they were trying to apprehend, and I haven't been successful in doing that. But what has been said by DHS is that ICE was conducting a operation to apprehend a violent illegal alien, and as we know, the ground in Minneapolis. I keep saying Minneapolis, and you guys are making fun of me for that. How do you say that?
Minneapolis?
Minneapolis. Okay, not Minion. Minneapolis. It's absolute chaos, okay? It's absolute chaos. There's ICE protests, and the governor, Tim Walz, which we'll watch a video here in a bit, is basically saying, how can we get all these federal agents out of our state? Okay?
Your finger off.
Yeah, a guy got his finger bitten off as well. It's devolving into absolute chaos, okay? And I'll preface this by saying multiple things can be true at once in this situation, Kai, and I'm excited to get your take on this. But my first kind of exposure to the details of this case came from the tweet from Homeland Security, actually, and I'll just read it here. It says, at 9:05 a.m. Central Time, as DHS law enforcement officers were conducting a targeted operation in Minneapolis against an illegal alien wanted for violent assault, an individual approached U.S. Border Patrol officers with a 9mm semi-automatic handgun, seen here. The officers attempted to disarm the suspect, but the armed suspect violently resisted. More details on the armed struggle are forthcoming. Fearing for his life and the lives and safety of fellow officers, an agent fired defensive shots. Medics on scene immediately delivered medical aid to the subject, but was pronounced dead at the scene. The suspect also had 2 magazines and no ID. This looks like a situation where an individual wanted to do maximum damage and massacre law enforcement. About 200 rioters arrived at the scene and began to obstruct and assault law enforcement at the scene. Crowd control measures were deployed for the safety of the public and law enforcement. So, Kai, this was kind of my first exposure to what happened, and then I saw the subsequent videos. But help me understand, how did you learn about this? And from reading that, what would you imagine the videos would look like?
Yeah, I think the first tweet I saw was of Tim Pool, who was doing a breakdown of it as well. And that's actually just what I was thinking is if you read that first before you saw the video, you're imagining a totally different thing. And in the video, obviously, it is not so clear. It's not as if the man is has his weapon drawn and walks up to police. The weapon is, this thing that comes out as a detail pretty much after the video is already out and blown up. So I think this is maybe in a long line of statements that are maximalist that the administration or DHS has put out. But by maximalist, I mean the worst possible interpretation of an individual's motives and of a situation. That's the way that this is being written up. Whether it's with Renee Good, who is being, accused of wanting to, run over a bunch of ICE agents, or whether now it's in this case where the claim is that he was trying to, do this mass casualty event, which I don't think we have any proof of. And it's tough to determine, other than just saying, if you have a gun, you have the capacity for it. And I don't think that's enough of an argument, because we do believe in the Second Amendment. So however you slice it, if you read that and then watch the video, you come out kind of seeing two very different things, I think.
And so we're going to take a look at, actually go to that Instagram link, I think. Okay. All right. So we're going to watch this. And this is basically what has led up to this point is ICE officers are trying to conduct some operation here. A woman then goes and approaches them. They're blowing whistles. They're being loud. They're trying to obstruct federal agents doing official business. Okay. And so then what happens is an ICE agent comes over, shoves this lady to the ground, and you see Alex. It appears as though he's trying to help this woman up. And in some video versions, you can audibly hear him asking the woman, "Are you okay?" And so let's watch this. And then this is also from the press conference soon after of the Department of Homeland Security explaining what happened allegedly. So I'd say listen to what she's saying, but pay attention to the video here. It's not going to show anything graphic or anything. This is just kind of the lead up to the situation.
Individual approached U.S. Border Patrol officers with a 9mm semi-automatic handgun. The officers attempted to disarm this individual, but the armed suspect reacted violently. Fearing for his life and for the lives of his fellow officers around him, an agent fired defensive shots. Medics were on the scene immediately and attempted to deliver medical aid to the subject, but he was pronounced dead at the scene. The suspect also had 2 magazines with ammunition in them that held dozens of rounds. He also had no ID. This looks like a situation where an individual arrived at this scene to inflict maximum damage on individuals and to kill law enforcement.
Okay. So a couple things right off the bat. I often conceal carry a gun, which everyone in the United States of America with a legal permit in some states, but here in Utah, it's constitutional carry. It is fully legal to carry a loaded weapon with extra magazines if you want, due to the Second Amendment. It is fully legal for someone to do that. Now, would I myself ever find myself in a similar situation like this? No. Because first off, they're breaking the law right now. They're obstructing business, right? And so he finds himself in a situation. Yes, you see the ICE officer come push the woman to the ground. And then the first thing that he does is he's holding his phone. And again, Kai, everyone can slow this down and break it down, but the officers are going to be judged by what they see in real time and what they're reacting to. Yep. And that's not a factor that people are considering. But 1, he's legally allowed to carry. 2, he's doing something inherently illegal that can be considered a felony, okay? Obstructing official business of federal agents. And so he goes then to the ICE person to try to push them away. ICE person grabs some mace, starts spraying him. He turns around to help the woman up. And then that's when they grab him, throw him to the ground, and he's on all fours. Okay. Now, it looks bad because 1, I'm thinking he approached him with a 9mm. I'm thinking he's having that thing drawn.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Like, if I'm concealed carrying and I come and dap you up, Kai, like, are you going to say, whoa, that guy approached me with a 9mm, you know?
No. And that's the thing is, especially juxtaposed. It's like, he absolutely did not have it drawn. It was something, he had it on his person, but you're right, to make the claim that, he approached them with the gun. He doesn't even really approach them. And this is, I think, really stupid because they don't need to make these comments. I think DHS and the admin, they're very maybe overzealous in trying to write up a story that is as, favorable to their side.
And black and white, yeah.
Yeah, that is as black and white, as favorable to the law enforcement side as possible, when there are cases where that simply isn't the case. You know, there are plenty of examples where it's like, look, this was, you know, a very messy shooting. Maybe it was legally justifiable. I don't know. The courts will find out. But this is the facts on the ground. This is the situation. Nobody else has been harmed. Please avoid these kinds of protests because they are prone to escalation and violence. That should have been the message. I think you get a lot more people more radicalized and then radicalized against law enforcement as a result when you start telling them something that is different from what they see. And I don't even think you have to make that claim. You can say, look, Alex Pretty was resisting arrest. In doing so, this right to bear arms that he has, it becomes a very different thing. It's no longer just a person legally carrying a weapon. It is a man who is resisting arrest, struggling with police for whatever reason, who is also in possession of a firearm. The firearm is removed from him before the shots take place. But like you said, what these cops are going to be held to is a reasonable standard, where in court, you're going to have another police officer who, with the information that the other officers on the ground had at the time, is going to have to judge whether an officer felt a reasonable or credible threat. Mm-hmm. And if it is an ongoing struggle, it actually does not matter if the gun is on his person. You can have the gun even removed from you and still have it be a justifiable shooting. Mm-hmm. And that's what I think a lot of people forget here.
Mm-hmm. And so that's the thing, Kai. It can be a justified shooting because of the facts on the case, which, again, we're talking before a full investigation is had on this situation. But to them have it be posed as something that it is very, very clear that it is not. Mm-hmm. Like, for example, Brando, if you want to pull up in our text thread, I sent you an X link of kind of a zoomed in picture of Alex. Yeah. So this is the initial like confrontation with the ICE agent, right? So he is carrying his phone in his hand and he's kind of filming the entire time. It doesn't appear that at any time he reaches for his gun at all. And yeah, it's tough because the optics of it are so terrible, but I sent it to a couple of my different Marine buddies that are also law enforcement and asked them a bunch of questions that we're going to get into. But I'm like, first, watch this video and then help me understand, like, do you think this is a good shoot or a bad shoot? And what happens is he's put on all fours, right? Mm-hmm. And his gun is holstered on the back. What you see in the slow down video that we just watched is one of the ICE agents goes over and removes his gun. And then what you see is one of the officers right behind him pulls, and you can hear audibly one of the officers yells gun, right? So in a struggle like this, you have an officer yelling gun. There's 8 of them, like 6 or 8 of them on top of him. So it's chaos, right? So it could be reasonable that one of the officers that's trying to grab his pistol, his firearm from him, and then another officer yells gun. When he sees that hand pull away with the gun, then you see the guy on the back. And you can watch the video over and over. We're not going to show the full thing because, I mean, maybe some of you don't want to see these graphic images and stuff like that. But to then have him disarm him, someone yells gun, and then, you know, an officer can perceive, oh, I see a gun being pulled. Someone yells gun. I'm going to apprehend the threat. What is pretty disturbing is then about 11 more bullets are fired. And 5 of those, if you watch the video, pretty much after the dude is just done on the ground. You know what I'm saying? And so there's a lot of nuance to this. And my buddy was telling me, he's like, yeah, people are acting like cops are judged to a standard of like slow-mo video and analysis and stuff. It's like, no, you're judged on how you're reacting to situations in real time. Mm-hmm. And if you perceive that reasonable threat. What's most concerning here is my buddy, what he said is based on the way that everyone reacted after, I can tell that I think these officers are very inexperienced and don't have the necessary training. And I was like, well, help me understand this guy that I'm talking to. He was in the, he's in Wasatch County Sheriff's Department. And I'm like, well, help me understand, like from not knowing anything to then being trusted to have a firearm and go and enforce the law. How long was your training pipeline? And he's like, in total, it's 6 months. And after our initial like 13, 14 week training of just, going through post and, our boot camp or whatever, then we do ride-alongs and then we have an observer with us. And before we're able to go out there and do operations and stuff like that and answer calls, it's 6 months.
This is, by the way, typically the case with ICE as well. Like the typical training time is, if I'm not mistaken, 27 weeks as a minimum. There's reports that has been decreased recently in order to spur on more hiring, in order to get people into the field quicker. And some people say that it's as little as 6 weeks, which is obviously like, that's just, it's not good cost benefit analysis, right? For however many ICE agents you need, having them out in 6 weeks is going to increase so many of the kind of negative interactions that people have with them. Is going to put many more people's lives at risk. And this is where I think, you end up with these videos of people bragging about how much money they're making, and you get some of these negative responses after these shootings that do occur. So if this is substantiated, if this like 6 week training minimum is true, terrible. Like we need people much better trained.
Yeah, Brandon, we actually just do a Google search real quick. How long is the training pipeline for ICE agents?
Typically it is 27 weeks. Like that's the requirement. But yeah, I've just heard reports that they've decreased it. That's kind of the big word on the street.
Yeah. And so it's super, like 6 weeks, dude, when you are being asked to be put in the most stressful of environments. Granted, we already said these people are breaking federal law, and it is a felony to impede or obstruct federal agents doing operations.
And that could be detention, that can be investigation, that could be an arrest, that could be literally just like trailing them as they're, in duty, doing their job. It could be all of those things. So,
yes, but okay. So Brandon pulled this up here. It says as of early 2026, the training pipeline for ICE deportation officers has been significantly shortened to approximately 8 weeks, or roughly 47 to 48 days, from a previous duration of about 5 months. No, from what I was asking him as well, is he has friends that are also in ICE here in Utah, and that the training has been decreased significantly. And so my concern is they're being asked to be put in these most stressful situations and being expected to be held to that same standard as a basic run-of-the-mill police officer. They're going through several months of training, and to expect these people to be able to make the same sound and correct decisions in the midst of chaos and stress like this, it's just, in my opinion, it's not a great idea. Yeah. Now, then is the solution to rid the entire state of all federal law enforcement? Here's the thing. Where is the state police? You know what I'm saying? Where's the local law enforcement that can be assisting these people that have in-depth training? It's just anarchy is not the answer, and it appears as though the leaders of the state are kind of calling for that. If you want to pull up that YouTube clip, Brando, of Tim Walz, okay? So this is just a clip from the press conference soon after the shooting.
What do we need to do to get these federal agents out of our state? You thought fear, violence, and chaos is what you wanted from us? And you clearly underestimated the people of this state and nation. We are tired, but we're resolved. We're peaceful, but we'll never forget. We're angry, but we won't give up hope. And above all else, we are clearly unified.
Okay, pause there. Okay, so then for the governor of the state to say, hey, Donald Trump, what's the plan here? How do we get all of these federal agents out of our state? It's not the move, dude.
Yeah, and you're right. Two things can be true at once, which is you can disagree with a shooting that takes place and also understand that the laws still need to be enforced. And that's, I went in depth about the entire deportation issue, everything that's happening in Minnesota on a show I did a couple days ago. And some people ask, why haven't you gotten into the details of the shooting? Why haven't you analyzed it? I'm like, look, first of all, I'm not an analyst. I'm not a legal scholar or expert. I can listen to what they're saying and see what they're saying, but they're also differing in their opinions. And so at the end of the day, what is the question is exactly that. What do we do? Are we going to stop enforcing our laws because there was a bad shooting? Are we going to stop arresting people for violent crimes because a cop used excessive force? No, that would be ridiculous. Unfortunately, that's what you saw during Black Lives Matter. And what did that lead to? $2 billion in property damages, the deaths of, people like David Dorn. And it is just completely irresponsible. And frankly, I think this is actually the point, right? These are almost manufactured martyrs that are tokens with which the Minnesotan government can go in and basically argue for the withdrawing of ICE and federal agents. And so Trump right now, he's brought up this issue of the Insurrection Act. And if you read the language of the Insurrection Act, it very clearly qualifies what's happening in Minnesota, which is that there is an obstruction or an impeding of the enforcement of U.S. laws, of certain parts of U.S. code. All of that is happening. The sanctuary cities across the country, they exist in order to harbor criminals because they have entered the country illegally, and the harboring of somebody who does not have legal status in the United States, has immigrated here illegally, that in and of itself is a felony. So by every account, there's a legal justification for the Insurrection Act. But now that Trump has said that, there's no going back. I think if Trump does anything to withdraw the troops, if he draws back these, threats of using the Insurrection Act, I think all of these rioters, they win. And what is the worst thing ever that you could do right now? Telling them that this strategy of interrupting what the police are doing, attempting to exercise and enforce the law, interrupting the lawful execution of U.S. legal code, interrupting these things, violently protesting, burning property, even getting to the point of, attacking and assaulting not only police officers, but journalists, which proves, by the way, that this is not about transparency. It's not about journalism. If that were the case, Cam Higbee wouldn't be stalked. James O'Keefe wouldn't be getting literal death threats as he pulls into Minnesota. So what I think we have to realize is that at this point, you can't withdraw. At this point, it is either this anarcho-tyranny that we have ruling the streets of Minneapolis, or it's law and order. And however bad the shooting of either Renee Good or Alex Pretty is, there is just absolutely we have no ability to stay our hand and draw out of Minneapolis, because then we enable them, we tell them what they are doing is correct, it is right, and then it works. And that is even more dangerous.
Mm-hmm. I'd be curious to get your take on this. And I think we briefly talked about this before, but obviously, I think that there is scriptural precedence for law and order. Mm-hmm. Christ advocates for the paying of taxes, render Caesar what is Caesar's. And we as a, church body of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, we believe in honoring and sustaining the law. And so I'm curious, and I think you've shared this with me before, but in the Book of Mormon, a precedence of law and order.
I mean, the big one that comes to mind, right, is with Moroni. This is maybe like the most, the most maybe what would be the word, advanced thinking, kind of implicate or applying of justice, where you don't even have necessarily people committing crimes. Like, there's no violent crime being committed by people conspiring to, take over the government. But Moroni, seeing that there is an imminent threat, applies, his justice and goes after them proactively. And this kind of proactive justice, this is obviously, something that is even controversial within the Book of Mormon, because people assume, well, Moroni, this and the movement for freedom, for families, for liberty rather, this is a movement that maximizes or that seeks to prioritize the maximization of liberty. But then you have the way that he acts, even like throwing in jail political dissidents. You see it totally as like a proactive use of state and military power in order to quell this rebellion that's occurring. But I think it's totally legitimate. And I think a lot of people are maybe uncomfortable with that. And I would even compare it a little bit, obviously Moroni being a much more virtuous person, but I would compare it a little bit to the way that there is executive authority in cases of insurrection, rebellion, and certainly in times of war. People are honestly uncomfortable, and they likely would be if they knew. They would be uncomfortable with the amount of authority that is delegated or relegated to the president during times of war or insurrection. Mm-hmm. It's quite surprising. But I think it's because when you allow these things to happen, and if you are unable basically to put down active resistance and rebellion like this, the way that Moroni did, or the way that we're attempting to in some way, although, again, I don't mean to compare these two causes. One is spiritual, the other is far more political. But if you compare them, you do see that maybe the stakes are similar, which is that if you withdraw, if you let these people do what they're doing, you lose your country eventually.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, I just want to hear your take on that. But it's so we've said it, I think, maybe we got to get a running count on this, but like 8 times on the show. That same phrase that's quoted so often from the late president of the church, Russell M. Nelson, that it will be impossible to survive spiritually in the coming days without the constant guiding voice of the Holy Spirit. Because what you have here, and Brand, if you want to pull up our text thread, I think I sent you another thing where someone's saying, this is the truth, what happened, and then let's see if it's this one. It might be that other X link, but let's see. Okay, yeah. It says, the truth. The officer who disarmed him didn't know how to handle a weapon properly, and he indeed negligent discharged it into the ground, and the other officers then shot the man, unsure of what just happened. So we're going to look at this slowed down thing. I'm not sure if I see it discharge or not, but you guys be the judge. All right. So, ooh. Okay, so you have a lot of people giving analysis on this slowed down video and saying this is the truth of what happened here. And yeah, I don't necessarily see the gun go off there, but it's tough because these two different sides are being presented here. And we've talked about on the show before how sin is coming from an archery term, meaning missing the mark, right? So if you miss the mark over here or over here on two different sides, you're still missing the mark, okay? So is it true that he was doing nothing wrong and that he was just trying to help that lady up and like he was doing everything right and he was killed in cold blood after he was disarmed? No, that's not true. He was actively engaged in essentially a felony, okay? Now, is it true that he approached the law enforcement with a 9mm and wanted to inflict maximum damage on law enforcement and that they tried to disarm him? That was the initial, apprehension process? No, that is completely false because it was when he was on all fours on the ground and his back holster was exposed because his shirt was pulled up and he was surrounded by 6 officers that then he was disarmed. And whatever happened, whether, one of the ICE agents that we looked maybe was one of those that only got 47 days worth of training. I hope not. We can't jump to that conclusion with any type of certainty, but whether someone yelling gun and him seeing that being pulled, then he's like, oh, this is a reasonable threat. One shot. And then I think the others back up and they just continue to engage with the threat. Who knows? But both of the polarizing messaging that's being had on each side is just going to lead us further away from the truth and further towards radicalization and feeling justified in indulging in our anger. And our biases.
Yeah, and when I think about this, and it should be noted, some people are saying that particular variant of the Sig Sauer that he has is very prone to discharges, which means that if this is the case, obviously, if there's any kind of malpractice, if there's excessive force, all of this should be prosecuted. All of it should go to court, and everybody should be able to sue for the maximum reparation possible from the federal government. Like, I'm in favor of that. I'm in favor of more transparency, more videos. I want more coverage of this. I just don't believe that it should be, an excuse for lawlessness. But on your point, Jackson, this is kind of the verse that I keep going back to because you have such polarized opinions that some people on the right, they're cheering this on. They're like, he got what he deserved. He FAFO'd, that this is, and I hate the way that people describe that because it is absolutely not ever our right to, delight in bloodshed. This is actually the exact sin, right, of the Nephites right before their great fall, right before Mormon stops leading them as their captain. It is that they swear by the throne of God that they'll cut their enemies down. They delight in this vengeance, this bloodshed. However justifiable it may be, it is still wrong. And so I keep going back to this verse in chapter 18 of Ezekiel. It's one of my favorites. And this is, the Lord speaking in verse 28. And he says, "Have I any pleasure at all that the wicked should die, saith the Lord God, and not that he should return from his ways and live?" And then he goes and he actually critiques as well the righteous, saying that, when we sin, none of our righteousness, not a single bit, shall be counted towards us. And so I just think it's a humbling and a sobering reminder to first introspect, look at, the sins in our own lives. And second, also to realize that, God does not take any joy in the fact that even a wicked man will die. And so why are we here cheering that, our fellow brother or sister is dying, however justifiable their death may have been? It's never something to be delighted in, bloodshed, even if it is something that at times is even necessary as a consequence of actions. It still shouldn't be cheered on.
Yeah.
And can I just add to that real quick?
Yes,
I know
bro.
I'm off camera, but
No, Brenda, we'd love to hear you.
just to go along with this attitude of not delighting in bloodshed and stuff, I see a lot of people on the political right saying, having an attitude of, I don't care what happens after what happened to Charlie Kirk. I don't care what happens to any leftists now. And I just think that's absolutely the wrong attitude to adopt, because it enters that territory of seeing people not as human, but as just a part of a narrative that furthers your agenda, and it's kind of sickening. And I just think, especially as Latter-day Saints, as Christians, we have an opportunity to not do that and to continue to show an outpouring of love towards anyone and everyone, while still defending what is truth. But just not having this, it's just gross to see people saying stuff like that.
I know, dude. And I even saw something the other day. I don't know if you saw this as well, but Senator Mike Lee tweeted something about Tyler Robinson. It's like, Tyler Robinson executed Charlie Kirk in public. Tyler Robinson should be executed in public. Did you see that tweet?
I didn't see it, but I can imagine that that's real.
Okay, yeah. Yeah, when I saw that, I was like, I thought we threw away eye for an eye, you know what I'm saying? I believe in justice. But this like extreme view of vengeance is just, Yeah, so anyways, to kind of wrap a bow on this is, before jumping to conclusions, seek every possible recourse that you can to find out all the facts of an ongoing investigation, which I pray and hope that a thorough investigation is being conducted before you allow something to radicalize you and make you justify something that's maybe not justifiable, right? Complex situation, and it just frustrates me when people give such polarizing takes on either side. Oh, it's completely unjustified, like he's a murderer, he should be thrown in prison, he should receive the death penalty, or oh, he went there looking for trouble, he had a gun. That is not yeah. Anyway, so let us know what you guys think in the comments. I think, we need to do whatever it takes to run further and further away from division and chaos and closer to the truth. And so, to end on kind of a happy note, Brando, I just sent you a link here that I saw over the weekend. I was like, let's go, bro. And that's a picture of this handsome mug, okay, at this podium at the Utah State Capitol, giving a speech at the March for Life. Golly.
That was, I can't lie, I'm aura farming a little bit there. The flags in the background. Very, very good photographers. Shout out my dad. Shout out my dad for the epic photo. It was a beautiful march, That is the one thing kind of that I talked about on the steps. I'll give you just the preview, is that no matter what march takes place there, they almost always assume the position of life. Because whether you're marching for the climate or marching for some other political cause, you're assuming that the future is taken care of and that it will be inherited by some people who will be born. So the cause of life is a cause that we should all be able to unite around.
Yeah, for sure. And those of you that have watched the show before, you know our thoughts on the unrighteous execution and murdering of children in the womb. It's sick and twisted. But Kai, it's so great having you on the show once again. You're doing amazing things. Some would say you're on a generational run here, okay?
So true.
Go subscribe to Kai Schwemmer on YouTube, on Rumble, on X, on Instagram. Kai Schwemmer or Kai Clips. We're going to link it all below. But Kai, God bless you.
Hey, God bless Jackson. Thank you as well, Brandon. Love you guys.
Yeah, so excited to see your guys' comments on this video today. And hit the subscribe button if you enjoyed it. Share with your friends. Leave a like because it shows it to more people. And remember, if you're not looking at the world through a gospel lens, aided with the Holy Spirit, you're only getting half the story. God bless you.